My name is Corinne Radcliffe. I am 31 years old. And the first film I ever made was a 4-minute short about a girl who talks to the moon because nobody in her house will listen. I shot it on a camcorder I found at a garage sale for $11 when I was 14. The audio was terrible. The lighting was just a desk lamp taped to my bookshelf. I showed it to my mom on a Tuesday evening in October, and she watched maybe 90 seconds before she said, "That's nice, Corinne," and went back to folding towels. That was the beginning. Not the beginning of filmmaking. That started earlier, somewhere around age 10, when I would rearrange my stuffed animals on my windowsill and narrate little scenes into a tape recorder. But 14, that was the beginning of understanding that the thing I loved most in this world was the thing my family would never take seriously. And for the next 17 years, that understanding shaped every choice I made, every silence I swallowed, and every empty seat I stopped saving. I grew up in Wynwood, Pennsylvania, in a split-level house with beige carpet and a backyard that sloped into a creek. My parents divorced when I was 11. My dad, Richard Radcliffe, got the house. My mom, Gloria Fenton, moved to a rental apartment 14 minutes away on Haverford Avenue and told me it was temporary. It wasn't. She's still there. My dad remarried when I was 16. His new wife was a woman named Janine Lowell, a dental hygienist with 2 Pomeranians and a voice that carried through walls. Janine was not unkind, exactly. She was just certain. Certain that film was not a career. Certain that I was wasting my time. Certain that her opinion was the one my father needed to hear at the dinner table every Thursday night. My mom and Janine had almost nothing in common. But on the topic of my future, they were perfectly synchronized. Movies are dreams, Corinne. You need a paycheck. That's what my mom said on March 9, 2014, when I told her I was applying to the film program at Temple University. I was 17. I had a 3.74 GPA. I had already been accepted to 2 other schools with partial scholarships. But when I mentioned Temple and the film program specifically, she set her coffee mug down on the counter at 7:18 a.m. and looked at me like I had told her I was joining a cult. "Your cousin Andrea went into nursing," she said. "She has a pension. She has a house. What does a filmmaker have? A dream and a maxed-out credit card." I enrolled at Temple anyway. I paid for it with a combination of federal loans, a $2,300 per semester scholarship I renewed every year, and 2 part-time jobs, one at a campus coffee shop and one transcribing medical dictation for a clinic on Broad Street at $13.75 an hour. My mom did not contribute a single dollar, not because she couldn't. She earned $54,200 a year as an office manager at a dental group in Ardmore. She simply did not believe in funding what she called a hobby disguised as a degree. During my freshman year, I came home for Thanksgiving. It was November 23, 2014. Janine had cooked the turkey. My dad had set out the good plates. My cousin Andrea was there with her boyfriend, and Aunt Cheryl was telling everyone how Andrea had just gotten accepted into an accelerated nursing program at Villanova. "That's wonderful," Janine said. She turned to me. "And what about you, Corinne? Are you still doing the film thing?" The way she said the film thing, like it was a rash I hadn't outgrown. "I'm in my first year of the program," I said. "I just finished my first short." "That's cute," Janine muttered. She didn't ask what it was about. She passed the cranberry sauce to Andrea and said, "So tell us more about Villanova." My dad said nothing. He ate his turkey and looked at his plate. That was his role in every conversation about my career: silence. Not cruelty. Not support. Just a man chewing quietly while the women around him decided whether my work counted. By sophomore year, I had stopped mentioning film at family dinners. By junior year, I had stopped going to most of them. I would tell my dad I had a shift at the coffee shop. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes I just sat in the editing lab at Temple until 11:45 p.m., rewatching my footage because the editing lab was the only room in my life where nobody asked me when I was going to do something real. Before I tell you what happened after I graduated, tell me, what's the weather like where you are right now? Is it the kind of evening where you can hear the neighbors through your window? Because that's the kind of evening it was the first time I screened a film for an audience that wasn't my professor. And I remember every second of it. I graduated from Temple in May 2018 with a Bachelor of Arts in Film and Media Arts. I was 21. My GPA was 3.81. I had directed 4 short films during my time in the program, 2 of which screened at student festivals in Philadelphia. My thesis film, a 22-minute piece called Still, mostly about a woman caring for her aging father while working night shifts at a laundromat, won the department's annual jury prize. My advisor, Professor Martin Gould, called it the most emotionally precise student work I've seen in 9 years. My mom did not attend the screening. She said she had a dental appointment at 3 p.m. that she couldn't reschedule. The screening was at 6:30 p.m. My dad came. He sat in the 3rd row and clapped when it ended and told me it was really something. Janine did not come with him. She had the Pomeranians to walk. That was the pattern. For the next 5 years, every time I made something, every time I poured months of my life into a project, begged actors to work for free, maxed out a credit card, slept 3 hours a night in the editing suite, the response from my family was a version of the same silence. Not hostility. That would have been easier. What my family gave me was something worse than cruelty. They gave me indifference. The slow, steady kind. The kind that says, "We see you doing that thing, and we have decided it does not matter enough to watch." After Temple, I moved to Brooklyn. I got a job as a production assistant at a small documentary company on Atlantic Avenue. The pay was $2,150 a month before taxes. My rent was $1,475 for a room in a 3-bedroom apartment in Bushwick. I ate rice and canned beans 4 nights a week. I saved what I could, usually around $187 per paycheck, and I funneled every cent of it into equipment. A used Canon C100 for $1,340 from a guy in Queens. A shotgun microphone for $289. A portable lighting kit for $412. I made my first post-college short in the fall of 2019. It was called Glass Hours. It was 11 minutes long. I submitted it to 14 festivals and was rejected by all of them. Every single one. I got the last rejection email on February 3rd, 2020 at 9:12 a.m. while I was sitting on the B62 bus heading to work. I read it, closed my phone, and stared out the window at the Williamsburg Bridge for the rest of the ride. That evening, I called my mom. I told her about the rejections. She said, "Maybe that's a sign, honey." Then she asked if I had considered learning QuickBooks, because Andrea's office was hiring an administrative assistant. I made my second short in early 2020, right before the pandemic shut everything down. That one was called No Return Address. I filmed it in my apartment with 2 actors and 1 overhead light. I paid the actors in home-cooked pasta and cab fare, $34 each. It got into the Brooklyn Emerging Artists Festival in November 2020, a small online screening due to COVID. 47 people watched the live stream. One of them left a comment that said, "This is special." I called my mom to tell her. She picked up at 8:34 p.m. on a Thursday. "That's great, honey," she said. "Listen, can I call you back? Jeopardy is on." She did not call me back. My third short, Moth Light, screened at a festival in Providence in April 2022. I drove there alone. 3 hours each way. The audience was small, maybe 60 people, but a reviewer from a Rhode Island arts blog wrote 2 paragraphs about my film and called it quietly devastating. I printed the review and taped it to my bedroom wall above my desk. It stayed there for 2 years. Some mornings, when I was too tired to edit and too broke to go anywhere, I would read those 2 paragraphs and remember that someone, somewhere, had watched my work and found it worth writing about. Between 2020 and 2024, I made 5 short films and 1 feature-length documentary. Each one cost me between $4,700 and $23,400 to produce. I funded them through freelance editing work, a part-time job color-correcting wedding videos at $22 an hour, and 1 small grant of $7,500 from the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts that I applied for 3 times before I got it. Each time I finished a film, I submitted it to festivals. Each time a film was accepted, and by 2023 I had a roughly 40% acceptance rate, I would send invitations to my family. Personalized. Handwritten. I would include the date, the venue, the screening time, and a note that said, "I saved you a seat." My mom came to 0. Janine came to 0. My dad came to 2, the first screening in 2020 and one in Philadelphia in 2022, but both times he left before the Q&A because Janine called him at exactly the moment the credits rolled. I don't know if the timing was deliberate, but it happened twice. The thing that broke something in me wasn't the absence. I had gotten used to empty seats. The thing that broke something was what happened on November 11, 2023, at 6:14 p.m., when I called my mom to tell her my documentary Bright Noise had been selected for the Montclair Film Festival, a legitimate, nationally recognized festival with press coverage and industry panels.
She paused.
"Corinne," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I don't want you to get upset." I waited. "When are you going to get a real job?" I was 27 years old. I had been making films for 13 years. I had 4 festival selections, a university jury prize, a state arts grant, and over 600 hours of edited footage on 3 external hard drives in my closet. And my mother, the woman who was supposed to be the first person in my corner, was still asking me when I planned to stop. "I have a real job, Mom," I said. "No," she snapped. "You have an expensive habit. Andrea just bought a house in Bryn Mawr. 3 bedrooms. A yard. What do you have?" I had a roommate. I had $4,133 in savings. I had a film that would screen at Montclair on December 3rd in front of 300 people. And I had a mother who would not be there. "I have a seat saved for you," I said. "Row 4. Aisle." "I can't make it," she said. "Your Aunt Cheryl is having us over for dinner that night." Aunt Cheryl lived 9 minutes from the venue. Dinner was at 5 o'clock. The screening was at 7:45. "You could come after," I said. "Corinne, I'm not driving to New Jersey for a movie." That was November 2023. I went to Montclair alone. I watched my documentary screen in a room full of strangers who cried at the ending. The festival programmer, a woman named Diana Sutton, shook my hand afterward and said, "I think you're going to be someone people remember." I nodded. I didn't tell her that the people I most wanted to remember me had already forgotten. 2 weeks after Montclair, on December 17th, I drove to Philadelphia for a friend's holiday party. The party was at a bar in Fishtown. I almost didn't go, but my college friend Marin was there, and she introduced me to a woman named Vera, a high school friend of Marin's who worked in medical billing and lived in Ardmore. "Ardmore," I said. "My mom works in Ardmore." Vera tilted her head. "Wait, Gloria? Gloria Fenton? At Dr. Brennan's office." "That's her." Vera smiled. "Oh, I know Gloria. She talks about her daughter all the time." I felt something shift in my chest. "She does?"
"Yeah.
She's always saying how you're doing really well in the city. Something about working in video production for a big marketing company." I stood very still. The bar was loud. Someone was playing music I didn't recognize. I set my glass down on the counter. "What marketing company?" I said. "I don't remember the name. She just said you moved to New York and got into video production. Corporate stuff." She seemed proud. My mom had never once told me she was proud, but she had told a stranger in Ardmore that I worked in corporate video production. She had taken the thing I actually did, the films, the festivals, the 17 years of making something from nothing, and she had replaced it with a story she could explain at the dentist's office without feeling embarrassed. I drove home that night on the turnpike at 10:48 p.m., and I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Not because she lied. Parents lie all the time. Small lies, gentle ones, the kind that smooth over the parts of their children's lives they don't understand.
But this was not a gentle lie.
This was erasure. She had not exaggerated my career. She had invented a different one that didn't include a single film I had ever made. I didn't confront her. I didn't call. I didn't bring it up the next time we spoke, which was 3 days before Christmas, when she asked if I was coming to Aunt Cheryl's for dinner on the 25th. I said yes. I sat at the table. I watched my cousin Andrea show photos of her new bathroom renovation. I watched Janine compliment the renovation for 11 minutes. I ate my food, and I was quiet, and I left at 8:20 p.m., and I drove back to Brooklyn in the dark. That was the last family dinner I attended before the broadcast. After Montclair, three things happened in rapid succession. First, Diana Sutton introduced me to a distribution consultant named Arlo Mehta, who reviewed Bright Noise and told me it had broadcast potential. He said this at a coffee shop on Bleecker Street at 10:22 a.m. on December 17, 2023, and I nearly spilled my tea. Second, Arlo connected me with an acquisitions coordinator at a national public television network who was looking for independent documentaries for a new showcase series. Her name was Patricia Young. She watched Bright Noise on January 4, 2024, and emailed me at 3:41 p.m. the same day with one sentence: "Can we talk?" Third, and this is the part that still makes me hold my breath when I think about it, Patricia offered me a broadcast slot. National television. My documentary, airing on a Tuesday night at 9 p.m., as part of a curated independent film showcase that averaged between 8 and 14 million viewers per episode. The contract arrived on January 22, 2024. I sat on my bed in my Bushwick apartment and read every word. The licensing fee was $37,500. That was more money than I had made from filmmaking in the previous 5 years combined. My hands were shaking when I signed it at 11:53 p.m. that night. I did not call my mom. I did not call my dad. I did not call Janine, or Aunt Cheryl, or Cousin Andrea with her 3-bedroom house in Bryn Mawr. Something inside me finally settled. Not in a dramatic way. Not with tears or fists or shouting. It settled the way dust settles after the last truck leaves a construction site. Quietly.
Completely.
And it did not stir again. I sat on my kitchen floor at midnight with the signed contract in my lap. The radiator was clicking. There was a siren somewhere south of my building. The linoleum was cold through my jeans. I pressed my back against the cabinet under the sink, and I thought about every empty seat. 5 screenings. 5 handwritten invitations. 5 times I had walked into a venue and looked for a face I recognized and found none. I had spent 17 years trying to make them look, and they never looked, and I was done asking. I thought about what Professor Gould had told me once, during my senior year at Temple. The hardest part of making art is accepting that the people closest to you might be the last ones to understand it. I hadn't believed him at 21. At 30, sitting on a kitchen floor in Bushwick at 12:17 a.m., I understood perfectly. I did not make a dramatic announcement. I did not cut anyone off. I simply stopped extending the invitation. For the first time in my adult life, I did not save a seat. The broadcast aired on March 19, 2024 at 9 p.m. Eastern. I watched it from a viewing party at a small theater in Williamsburg that Arlo had helped organize. There were about 40 people in the room, other filmmakers, a few journalists, my friend Kira, who had been my roommate since 2019, and my old professor Martin Gould, who had driven down from Philadelphia that morning and brought a bottle of sparkling cider, because he remembered I didn't drink. I sat in the second row. The lights went down. And for 53 minutes, a story I had written, directed, shot, and edited played on national television for an estimated 11.4 million viewers. I will not pretend I didn't cry. I cried through the entire opening sequence. Not because I was sad. Because I was sitting in a room full of people who had come, who had actually physically shown up to watch something I had made. And the contrast between that room and every empty seat I had saved for the previous 5 years was so sharp it cut through every wall I had built. Professor Gould put his hand on my shoulder during the credits and said, "You earned this, Corinne." Every frame. The broadcast ended at 9:53 p.m. By 10:15 p.m. I had 47 text messages. 12 were from people I hadn't spoken to in years. 3 were from journalists requesting interviews. 1 was from my college roommate in Philadelphia, who had seen my name in the TV guide listing that morning and screamed. None were from my mom. None were from my dad. None were from Janine. At 9:41 p.m., 8 minutes before the broadcast even ended, my mom's neighbor, a woman named Ruth Calloway, called my mom's landline. "Gloria," Ruth said, "is that your Corinne on Channel 12 right now?" My mom did not answer. According to what my Aunt Cheryl told me weeks later, my mom walked from her kitchen to the living room, turned on the television, and stood in front of it for the remaining 6 minutes of the broadcast without sitting down. She watched the credits scroll. She saw my name, written, directed, and produced by Corinne Ratcliffe, appear in white letters on a black screen. And she stood there in her living room in Haverford, in the apartment she had lived in for 20 years, and she realized that the daughter she had compared to Andrea, the daughter whose career she had replaced with a fiction about corporate video production, the daughter whose 5 handwritten invitations she had declined, that daughter had just been watched by more people in one evening than most filmmakers reach in a lifetime.
Then she called me.
At 9:58 p.m., 5 minutes after the credits rolled, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It said, I pressed decline. She called again at 10:03 p.m., and 10:11 p.m., and 10:14 p.m., and 10:19 p.m. 5 calls in 21 minutes from a woman who had not called me about a single screening in 5 years. At 10:22 p.m., she sent a text. It read, Corinne, I just saw your film on TV. I am so proud of you.
Please call me.
I read it once. I locked my phone. I turned back to the room and hugged Kira and drank sparkling cider and talked to a journalist from IndieWire who wanted to write a profile. I did not respond to my mother's text that night. My dad called at 10:47 p.m. I let it ring. Janine sent a text at 11:02 p.m., the first text she had ever sent me that was not about a holiday schedule, that said, we had no idea. Congratulations. By 8:15 a.m. the next morning, I had 14 missed calls from immediate family. My mom, my dad,
Janine,
Aunt Cheryl, cousin Andrea, my Uncle Paul, who I had spoken to exactly twice in the last 4 years. Every single person who had never attended a screening, never read a festival program, never once typed my name into a search engine to see what I had been doing with my supposedly fake career, they all suddenly knew exactly where to find my phone number. My mom did not stop at phone calls. At 6:30 p.m. on March 20th, one day after the broadcast, she drove to my apartment in Bushwick. The apartment I had lived in since 2019. Except I had moved out in January 2024, 2 months earlier, to a one-bedroom in Greenpoint that the licensing fee had allowed me to finally afford. Rent, $2,275 a month. My own kitchen. My own editing room. A window that faced east. My mom stood outside the Bushwick building and buzzed my old apartment 3 times. My former roommate Kira, who had stayed in the apartment with a new tenant, answered the intercom at 6:44 p.m. Corinne doesn't live here anymore, Kira said. Since when? My mom asked. Since January. Where did she go?
Kira paused.
She told me later she paused for a long time because she was angry. Not at my mom specifically, but at the whole machinery of it. 5 years of empty seats. 17 years of dismissal. And now, one Tuesday night on television, and suddenly my mom was standing on a stoop in Brooklyn asking where I lived. I think, Kira said, that if Corinne wanted you to know, she would have told you. My mom left. She called me 4 more times that evening. I did not answer. I let 3 weeks pass. During those 3 weeks, the aftermath of the broadcast unfolded in ways I had never anticipated. The IndieWire profile ran on March 25th. A filmmaker collective in Los Angeles invited me to speak at their spring symposium. An entertainment attorney named Naomi Delgado, whom Arlo Meta had recommended, began fielding distribution inquiries for my earlier short films. 2 streaming platforms wanted to license Glass Hours and No Return Address as a package. The combined offer was $14,700. My phone continued to ring. My mom called every 2 or 3 days. My dad texted once a week, short messages that said things like, just checking in and we should talk soon. Janine sent a Facebook message linking to the IndieWire article with a single comment. I share this with everyone at the office. Cousin Andrea, who had never once asked me about my work in a decade of holiday dinners, sent me a direct message on Instagram at 7:33 a.m. on March 22nd. OMG, Corinne. Why didn't you tell us? So proud of our family. Our family. Like she had been there. Like any of them had been there. But the thing that cut deepest came from Marin, my college friend. She texted me on March 27th at 4:16 p.m. Hey, remember Vera from that holiday party? The woman who works in Ardmore? She just told me your mom has been showing the IndieWire article to everyone at the dental office. Apparently, she's been telling people she always knew Corinne was destined for this. I read the text 3 times. I set my phone face down on my desk. I stared at the wall for a long time. 3 months ago, my mother had been telling Vera I worked in corporate video production. She had erased every film, every festival, every handwritten invitation. And now that 11 million people had watched my name in the credits, she was telling the same office that she always knew. Family can be a beautiful word, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a stage where other people perform your story for you, and you don't even get to hear the version they tell. I did not respond to any of them. On April 9th, 2024, at 5:15 p.m., I drove to my mom's apartment in Haverford. I had not been there in 7 months. She opened the door at 5:18 p.m. She was wearing the blue cardigan she always wore in spring. She looked smaller than I remembered. There were new lines around her mouth. She opened her arms like she was going to hug me. I stayed where I was. "Can I come in?" I said. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she had told me, at 17, that movies were dreams. The same table where she had asked me, at 27, when I was going to get a real job. "I watched your film," she said. "The whole thing. I recorded it, and I've watched it 3 times. "I know," I said. "Corinne, she stopped. Her eyes were wet. "I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know it was that good." I let the silence sit for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. The clock above the stove read 5:24 p.m. "Mom," I said, "I invited you to 5 screenings."
5.
"I sent you handwritten notes. I saved you seats. You came to none of them. You told me I needed a paycheck. You compared me to Andrea. You said you couldn't drive to New Jersey for a movie."
She was crying now, quietly.
She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. "I know," she whispered. "I know I did. And I know about the marketing company," I said. Her face changed. Something behind her eyes closed like a shutter. "A woman named Vera told me. She works near your office. She said you told everyone I was in corporate video production, that I worked for a marketing company in New York." I kept my voice level. I did not look away. "You didn't just ignore what I do, Mom. You made up a different version. One you could say out loud without feeling ashamed." She put both hands flat on the table. Her fingers were shaking. I wasn't ashamed," she sobbed. "I just didn't know how to explain it. People asked about you, and I didn't know what to say." "You could have said the truth," I said. "That your daughter makes films. That she's been in festivals. That she works harder than anyone you know." "I know," she whispered again. "So what changed?" I asked. "Was it the television? Was it the 11 million people? Did my work only become real when strangers said it was?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew. I stayed for 19 minutes. I did not raise my voice once. I told her that I loved her, that I had always loved her, and that the door to my life was not closed. But I also told her that the version of our relationship where I perform and she decides whether it counts, that version was finished. "If you want to be in my life," I said, "you come to the next screening. Not because it's on television. Not because your neighbor calls. Because it's mine." She nodded. She didn't say much. I think she understood that this was not a negotiation. It was a statement of terms. I drove back to Greenpoint. I parked on my street at 7:02 p.m. I went upstairs, made a cup of chamomile tea, and sat in my editing chair with the window open. The last light was coming through the buildings across the street, that particular amber that Brooklyn gets in early April. I held the mug with both hands, and I listened to the sounds of the neighborhood, someone's dog barking, a bus stopping, a child laughing on the sidewalk below, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Some people wait their whole lives for the world to give them permission to exist. I stopped waiting at 31. Not because the world finally noticed, but because I realized the only audience I ever truly needed was myself. Here is what I learned from 17 years of making films that my family refused to see. The people who love you will not always understand you. That is not cruelty. But when they refuse to look, when they dismiss the thing that lives at the center of who you are, that refusal leaves a mark. And the mark does not disappear the first time they finally pay attention. It sits there, quietly, reminding you that their recognition came late. And it came for their reasons, not yours. If you are building something that no one in your life takes seriously, keep building. Not to prove them wrong. Not for the moment they finally see you on a screen and call 5 times in 20 minutes. Keep building because the thing you are making is real, and it was real before anyone watched, and it will be real after the applause fades. What I know now that I did not know at 14 with a garage sale camcorder and a desk lamp is this: validation from the people who matter most to you is a gift. But it is not a requirement. You can love someone and still recognize that their approval is not the foundation your life stands on. Boundaries are not walls. They are door frames. They tell people, you are welcome here, but you enter on terms that keep us both whole. My mom came to my next screening. It was a short film showcase at a gallery in Chelsea on June 8, 2024. She arrived at 6:50 p.m., 10 minutes early. She sat in the third row. She watched the entire thing. She didn't say it was nice and go back to folding towels. She sat through the Q&A, and when someone in the audience asked me who had most influenced my work, she leaned forward in her chair. I said, a girl who once talked to the moon because nobody in her house would listen. My mom cried. Not the quiet kind this time. The kind where your shoulders shake and the person next to you offers a tissue. I saw it from the stage. And I let it be what it was: imperfect, overdue, and real.
We are still rebuilding.
It is slow. Some weeks she calls, and we talk for 40 minutes. Some weeks I don't answer until Thursday. That is the shape of it now. Not a fairy tale. Not a breakdown. Just 2 women learning that love and attention are not the same thing, and that one without the other is not enough. If you were in Corinne's place, if your mother only recognized your work after 11 million strangers watched it first, would you have opened the door when she showed up at the old apartment? Or would you have let her stand on that stoop and feel what 5 years of empty seats felt like?